I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Section 551.076, discussion regarding security devices or security audits, and the time is 5:31 p.m. The board will now convene an open session, and the time is 6:16 p.m. On behalf of the trustees, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast ISD School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during matters from the floor section of the agenda, or if you've signed up to address a specific action item, you will be called at that time. I'd like to remind everybody that the mission of Northeast is to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. A. Nimitz Middle School, Ms. Sanchez.
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. My name is Christina Sanchez, and I am the proud principal of Nimitz Middle School. Go Seahawks. I am honored to introduce two outstanding students from my campus. It is my great pleasure to introduce Maria de Jesus Alvarez. Maria, would you please stand? Maria is joined today by her loving parents, Mr. Jesus Alvarez and Ms. Veronica Alvarez, and sisters Brenda, Anna, and Veronica Alvarez. Will you please stand and be recognized as well? Thank you. You may be seated. Maria is an outstanding 8th grader whose motivation and drive shine through her academic and extracurricular pursuits. She is currently enrolled in a rigorous course load, including Art for High School Credit, AP Spanish, Dual Language History, and Athletics. Beyond the classroom, Maria proudly represents our campus as a member of the Seahawk volleyball team and looks forward to showcasing her competitive spirit this spring during track and field season. In her free time, Maria enjoys exploring her creative side, especially through her passion for art. Looking ahead, Maria aspires to become an orthodontist, a goal that reflects both her determination and her commitment to helping others. This evening, Maria will be leading us in the invocation. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Maria Alvarez as she comes to the podium.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, teachers, families, and everyone present. Please bow your heads and join me in a moment of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. We ask for your guidance and wisdom as our leaders make decisions that impact our schools and our future. Bless our students with courage, our teachers with strength, and our community with unity and purpose. May everything said and done here tonight be in the best interest of all students. In your name we pray, amen.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce Lillian Buendia. Lillian, will you please stand? She is joined today by her loving parents, Mr. Brian and Ms. Tasha Buendia. Will you please stand to be recognized as well? Thank you. You may be seated. Not you, Lillian. Lillian is an exceptional 8th grader who continually challenges herself through academics and extracurricular activities. She's a proud member of the symphonic band and serves as part of our junior cadets team. Academically, she excels in English honors while staying actively involved in athletics as a member of the Lady Seahawk volleyball team. She is also entertaining the idea of joining our tennis team this year. Outside of school, Lillian enjoys skateboarding and reading, hobbies that showcase both her adventurous and thoughtful sides. Looking ahead, Lillian aspires to be someone others can always rely on, with dreams of possibly pursuing a career in nursing. This evening, she will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Lillian Buendia as she comes to the podium.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Maria and Lillian, if y'all want to come on up to the front, you can take a picture of Miss Sanchez if you want to come up as well. Take a couple pictures, and parents, if you want to step to the middle and get a shot on your phone, you can do that. Thank you all very much for being here. You do not have to stay. You're welcome to if you need like some civic points or something like that. But thank you all. We appreciate the messages and the pledge. That's right. Civic points. Where am I? Oh, item 6, recognitions. A, President's comments and acknowledgement of special calendar events. All right, so we have a handful of things coming up this month. Today is National Coaches Day. So I don't know if our athletic director is in here or any other coaches, but thank you all for what y'all do. But it's today. Mr. Galvan? Okay. Thank you, Coach. There we go. October 8th, Wednesday, is Texas Education Human Resources Day. Next week, October 13th through 17th, is National School Lunch Week, where the theme is Texas Taste Tour, your school lunch passport. And those of you that have been able to sign up next Tuesday, we will be working a couple of shifts at Camelot Elementary School. So looking forward to, I don't know what's on the menu that day, but if it's not enchiladas, I might be disappointed. So. And then October 20th through 24th is National School Bus Safety Week. So everybody keep an eye out for our school buses and our kiddos and stop when that sign comes out, please. So, all right, item 7, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, or 5, pending litigation. Any person who persists on speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. If you signed up to speak on a specific agenda item, you will called up when the board reaches that specific item. Please remember that this is a business meeting of the board. Any person or group engaging in outbursts of any kind causing a disruption to the meeting will be warned, and if they persist, will be removed from the meeting. This is to ensure that all speakers have an opportunity to make comments without interruption and that the board members are able to pay full attention to speakers without any distractions. We also welcome comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail care the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas 78217. We have a couple of people signed up to speak just for matters from floor, and Ms. Thompson, the board secretary, will call your number and also keep time.
Number 1.
Good evening, President Byer, members of the board, Superintendent Micah, executive staff. My name is David Anderson. I'm here tonight representing the Northeast Education Association. On behalf of our membership, I want to share that NEIA fully supports the upcoming bond election, and we have encouraged our members to vote for all bond propositions. Every day, our members see how our district's facilities, technology, and resources directly impact the quality of education our students receive. Safe, modern, well-equipped schools are not luxuries. They are part of the foundation of student learning. These bond projects will enhance safety measures, update aging infrastructure, and ensure that every student has access to the tools they need to succeed. This bond is also an investment in our community. Supporting the bond means that we are not only supporting our students, but Northeast San Antonio as a whole. NEIA applauds the work of the Facilities Steering Committee and NEISD School Board. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Number 2.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I've never done this before, so here we go. It is an honor to be here in front of you folks. We've been in San Antonio now for 5 years, almost 5 years, and we came to Ronald Reagan High School because it is the best school that I have ever seen. We came from a small little town, Mont Belvieu, Texas, where we went to Barbers Hill High School, that everybody was the Eagle, whether you were in elementary all the way through a senior. My kids have a passion for the arts. They love musical theater. My daughter has wanted to be on Broadway since she was 3 years old, and she's going to make it. She's one of those. I am here tonight to ask for, I'm not an expert on bonds. I don't really know how they work or how much money goes places, but we have 2 of the best choir teachers in the entire state that share a classroom. They need additional space. My daughter, maybe 100 pounds soaking wet, is moving temporary risers after they took out the permanent ones so they can move stuff around so they can practice with their show choir. They have a dancing choir that performs at the Pearl. They perform at hospitals. They perform at assisted living places. It's an amazing group. If you've never seen a production, just the fall play had 150 students in it. It's amazing, and it is completely driven by choir. When you audition, you have the 2 theater directors and the 2 choir teachers. But asking our students to share a classroom at a school that has almost 4,000 students, moving their lunches around daily to go so they can actually have a place to perform. And this isn't like the band or football where it's after school. They are practicing in the parking lot, in the hallways, borrowing rooms when they can, and then they have to go to other classes. It's disruptive to others, and it's disruptive to them. And I'm asking that we look long-term to give these students what they need, because they are the best at what they do. The choir teachers have done everything they can with what they've got. They need more. And that is all I'm asking, is that we consider more space, that we don't make 2 teachers share 1 classroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, move on to item 8, presentations. A, intruder detection audit. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we discussed in executive session this evening, as of last Friday, we had 10 campuses go through the TEA's door audit, and all 10 were clean with no findings.
That's very good to hear. Thank you. Item B, bilingual ESL program evaluation. Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, executive staff, and guests. I'd like to ask our Senior Director, Lisa Calderon, to come forward for this agenda item. Test.
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. So every year, the districts are required to conduct an annual evaluation of the bilingual ESL program and present it to the board before November 1st. So here I am again. Is that better? Yeah? Okay. All right, so this is just a chart of our increase in emergent bilingual or our population every year. And this year was no different than 23-24. Now, what I do have to tell you is that this PEAM snapshot, it's usually in October, but last year there was having some glitches, I guess, in TEA in the system, and we did not report our PEAMs or submit our PEAMs until February of 25, and it's usually in October, at the end of October. So like at the end of this month, we're gonna submit the previous year. And of course it went up again a little bit, not as much as it had gone up before, but this year went to about, roughly 150, 170 students from the previous year. So now we are at 20.74%, or we were last year at 20.74% of the district enrollment. This is where all of our students fall in terms of programs. And we had a total of 13,460 students served in the bilingual program. Not all of them are emergent bilingual. As you can see in the pie, we have emergent bilinguals in ESL programs, emergent bilinguals in dual language programs, and then we have non-emergent bilinguals in dual language. So those are the kids that are English speakers and are participating in the dual language program, whether it's because their parents wanted them since the beginning, since they were kinder, or if the students were reclassified but the parents wanted them to continue in the program, so they stayed there and they're considered non-EBs anymore. Then we have a very small portion of denials, and these are the students these are the parents that don't want any services for their kids. And then we have the M1 through the M4, which are the monitor students. Once students reclassify, they go into a phase of 4 years, actually, of being monitored and making sure they're doing okay. We also have to report the ESL waivers and the bilingual exceptions. So for 2024-25, we had 149 teachers on the waiver, and we have 25 of them that are no longer with NEISD, and then 18 that obtained their actual certification. As of September 24th of this year, we have 135 teachers on the ESL waiver, and then we have 10 bilingual teachers for the exception. Now, we provide support for these teachers. We have 12 hours of professional development offered at least 5 times a year to support with their exams. 3 hours of professional development on content-based language instruction to support instruction in the classroom, and then also the reimbursement for their testing and certification once obtained. This is something that we have to do, as required by TEA, that we do provide the support for our teachers in those 2 areas, which is helping them with a test. So it's a test review, basically what we do, and also support them in terms of strategies. They don't have the certification. We have to come with a training that can support them in the classroom if they don't have that previous training. I'm going to show you the data now of what we had last year, and the first thing that I'm going to show you is the TELPAS data. TELPAS is the Texas English Language Proficiency Assessment System. So basically it is a test administered at the end of the year, every year, for all emergent bilinguals. So it doesn't matter if they are being serviced or not, it doesn't matter if they're in a dual language program, if they're in an ESL program, everybody takes the test at the end of the year. It assesses 4 language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And all components are tested online as of spring of 2023. But the testing online starts in 2nd grade. You're going to see data starting in 1st grade, which is based on a rubric. So the teacher looks at, the samples that they have, and then they holistically rate their kids. TELPAS has been changing. It has changed. It will change again next year. And so it's something that that the way they measure it changes. The way they measure advancement in their proficiency levels. And then the test is actually changing in 2 years. So next year, we're going to change the way they're measuring it. And then the following year the test is going to change. The whole test is going to change. So I'll be here with the updates for sure. So this is elementary grades from 1st grade to 5th grade. Then we have middle school. And what you see at the right side, which says state target, is the state gives us a target for elementary, middle, and high. So it's different for all three levels. And we have to meet that target. So each school has to meet that target, and then as a district, we have to meet that target. And then we have the high school. Now moving on to STAR, 3rd through 5th grade. And I have dual language and ESL programs side by side. The red bar, the first one, is NEISD. The middle bar is the region, it's Region 20. And then the right bar is the district. The 3 bars on the left are ESL programs, and the ones on the right are dual language. And this first one is reading. Next one is math. Then science. And now 6th through 8th grade to middle school. The same thing. Reading, math, science, and social studies. And now we move on to high school, EOCs, and of course, English 1 and 2, algebra, biology, U.S. history. So looking at the data and by setting our goals, we have set a few goals, and by the end of 25-26 school year, NEISD secondary emerging bilingual students enrolled in ESL programs will increase their approaches grade level performance on the STAR Reading Language Arts assessment from 43% to at least a 51%, reducing the gap with Region 20 and moving closer to the state average of 57%. By the end of 25-26 school year, Northeast ISD dual language students will maintain achievement above state and regional averages in STAR Spanish language arts at the performance levels, and increase the percentage of approaches grade level from 73 to at least 77% at the elementary level, strengthening biliteracy and advanced academic performance. And then our other goal is for TELPAS. So by the end of 25-26 school year, NEISD emerging bilingual students will increase TELPAS performance by at least 1 proficiency level, with 45% of elementary students and 35% of secondary students achieving this growth. And again, those numbers are based on the target, which are going to change next year. Next steps, we need to monitor student progress each semester using DUAs, benchmarks, and TELPAS data that we may have. Collaborate with core content areas to provide targeted professional development and content-based language instruction through design days and PLCs. And this is really critical because we really need all of our content area teachers to be on board with us, because kids are especially at the secondary level, because students go to an ESL teacher, for example, just for an hour a day or maybe 2 periods if they're recent arrivals. But then the rest of the day they spend with our regular general ed teachers. And so that's the work that we're doing this year to really, work with the schools and the deans and the APs to make sure that is happening in our classrooms. The next steps for elementary is ensure consistent implementation of biliteracy practice in all dual language classrooms, aligned with district initiatives. Use assessment data to identify student needs and provide targeted intervention and enrichment to promote growth on standardized assessments. Offer coaching and PLC support centered on content-based language instruction to on content-based language instruction to enhance instructional practices. Sorry, I forgot to click on that. Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you for the presentation. I think we'll probably have a few questions. I think Ms. Thompson was first, and then we'll move on down the line.
Thank you for all the info. For EBs in high school, spring 2025, the English 1 and 2 EOCs, what was the state's, like on the other previous one, you put the state's targets. What is the state target for that?
So when it comes to STAR, we don't have a target per se. That's only for TELPAS. STAR doesn't have a target.
Okay.
Okay, so it's based on I mean, however you do on percentages
Yeah,
that you
you're
get.
right,
Yeah.
moving.
TELPAS is the one that has a target where we have to meet a certain target to be able to get all the points, if you want to call it that way, for accountability.
Get all the points. That's what I wanted. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Chigi?
So on the 10 bilingual teachers, with an exception, tell me how that happens.
So it's the same as a waiver. They're not fully certified.
Okay.
So these are teachers who are certified. They have their general education certification, so they can be in a classroom, in a regular, general ed classroom, but they don't have that bilingual supplemental
Okay.
that they need to be able to teach in a
But
bilingual
they're
classroom.
working on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Why, I mean, is there a researched reason that our ESL scores seem to be on most subjects and ages lower than the dual language scores?
Yeah, if you go back to the research and look at dual language or bilingual education research, actually what they consider the lowest performing and the lowest program is the ESL pull-out program. And the reason is because kids don't have time to reinforce their native language to be able to learn a second language. And so the more background you give them in their first language, the better they're going to be learning a second language. I know that's kind of counterintuitive because you say, more English, they should be better in English, but it's kind of like the way the brain works. You create a map of language, and then putting on top of that, once you have it down, putting another language on top of that makes it better and easier for students to learn a second language. So dual language programs are maintenance languages, maintenance programs where they actually retain or maintain their home language, and they build on that proficiency of their native language to learn English. So basically that's what it is. I mean, anywhere you look at research. But there are some really good practices that we can do in ESL. And I think that one of the reasons why it's difficult to reach everybody is because our ESL students or students in ESL programs are all over the district. Dual language students are concentrated in certain schools. But ESL, it's all 60-something schools that we have. So it's a little bit more difficult to reach all of them and all the teachers.
And how many languages do we have?
60 plus.
Wow. Okay. That might be all I had. Oh, I do have one more question. For STAR, do we have an exemption for new arrivals, or do they have to take STAR the year they come?
They have to take the test. They don't count for the district or the school the first year, but it counts for them.
Okay.
So it counts as a failure. The child moves on with that failing, test the first year, but it doesn't count for us or for the school. The problem is that, especially in ESL programs, when we're testing kids after 2 years who've been here and counts, for the school, and again, research says that it takes 5 to 7 years to obtain to acquire that academic language. It is a problem. It's very difficult to get students at year 2, year 3, year 4 to be able to pass STAR in English.
That's all I have, and I just want to say thank you for your work and for what I think to be an incredible program.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Landry, did you have some questions?
Yes, I didn't know if you wanted. Okay. Yes, thank you again for all the work and the effort put into this. I just have a couple of generalized questions on the program. On slide 3, it says denials. Is that families that refuse to go to the program?
Correct. Those are parents that say, no, I don't want any services for my child. I don't want them to be in a bilingual classroom. I don't want them to be in an ESL classroom.
And do we have any statistics on how well they perform for that particular group? Do they do okay without the services?
Some of them do okay, not all of them. They usually perform a little bit below our ESL students. I mean, our teachers, it doesn't matter if they're denials or not. They're going to do whatever they need to do, you know, to help our students. But some of our teachers don't have all the tools because they're not certified. And that child doesn't have to be with a certified teacher. That child can be with any teacher. And so when they don't have the tools, you know, to help the child, that's when the problem comes in. But again, they are denials, so we don't have to put them with ESL certified teachers.
Okay. And then also for the program, does a student ever move out of the emergent bilingual or the
Or ESL or dual
ESL,
language,
right.
yes. So they are what we call reclassification at the end of the year, based on the TELPAS, and based on teacher recommendation. The child can be reclassified as a non-EB. Sometimes parents request, most of the time parents request for kids to continue in the dual language program, and we keep them in there because we know that they're going to do well, especially if they're reclassified already. And so we do that. But yes, they are reclassified, or, you know, they have the opportunity to be reclassified at the end of each year.
And so from year over year, we should see a little bit of a drop in that number for students who are still in the school but may have been declassified.
Right, but we also
But
have
then
kids
we
coming in.
New coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
So that's why it kind of balances out sometimes.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Ms. Cox, you had some questions?
I did, but Marcia was kind enough to ask it for me.
One question I had was related to the TAPAS, and it looked like elementary and middle school we had a slight dip year over year. And do we have some information as to what might be the result, or where that came from? Was it an increase in number of students? Was it resources, or was it just?
Well, the only thing that I can think of is we had a tremendous amount of new students in the district. We reclassified, so if you look at the difference between the previous year and this past year, information that I just gave you, it doesn't look like much of a difference, but we reclassified almost 1,000 kids at the end of that year. And that's because the state changed, again, the requirements of reclassification. So it's, you know, like I said, every year changes. And so, but we had a tremendous amount of students that came in. So they would have been in their 2 years, in their second year, because that's when we can measure if they grew or not. The first year is just a baseline for us, without previous schooling. A tremendous amount of kids without previous schooling. So they came into 4th grade, 5th grade, middle school, high school. But since you're talking specifically about elementary, they came without knowing how to read or write in Spanish.
And
Most of them
like
were Spanish speakers.
It was kind of a slight dip in elementary and in middle school.
Yes, and middle school, yes.
High school looked like it.
But we are working very intentionally this year to target TELPAS at all levels, at all 3 levels. Because, we saw that some schools also lost the points that they should have gotten because of TELPAS.
Sure.
And so we're working, as it's one of our biggest goals at the elementary and secondary level.
Right. Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you for the update again, and we'll look forward to next year.
Thank you.
Item 9, superintendent comments. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Got 4 tonight. Congratulations to head football coach T.P. Miller out at Johnson High School. He was recently named the San Antonio Inspirational Coach of the Week by Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Very fitting tribute since we're celebrating National Coaches Day today. The Reagan High School was recently crowned the Bands of America Regional Champions. Their hard work and countless hours of dedication and teamwork has paid off for them in a big way. The Madison High School culinary students recently brought home first place with their Shell Yeah seafood gumbo at the Medina Lake Cajun Festival. And this one here is kind of cool. So one of our former students, Dr. Richard Carrillo, who graduated from Lee in 2002, will make his international conducting debut in Mexico City this week in front of a crowd of about 10,000 at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. He is the director of choral activities at the University of Nebraska at Omaha and will be leading singers from across the country. He told us he gives NEISD full credit for the incredible music education he received from his time at Larkspur Elementary, learning to sing through the awkward voice change of middle school at Jackson Middle School, and the incredible choral experience he had singing at Lee. And now, of course, he's taking his talents internationally. So, that's all the announcements for the night, Mr. Byer. Thank you.
Great stuff to hear. Awesome. Item 10, board business. Unless there are any objections from the rest of the trustees, I'd like to move item C up above the other two so we can get to the folks that have come and decided to speak on behalf of this. That way we don't have to have them wait through some of our other stuff. With that, we'll go on to item C, discussion regarding HB 1481, and we do have a few people signed up to speak, and so Ms. Thompson, you call their name and she'll keep the time as well.
Number 8.
Actually, we had number 3. We'll go in order
Oh, okay, gotcha.
for that one.
Number 3, so just go all the way down.
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guest. My name is Shakita Gresham. I have 2 NEISD students attending middle school and high school in both the Reagan and Johnson clusters. As a parent, I want to thank the NEISD board for implementing a common sense cell phone policy that follows the law as written. My children aren't allowed to use cell phones during instructional time, which supports their learning. But they can text during lunch and passing periods, and that flexibility matters to my family. It allows me to send quick updates about after-school tutoring, PSAT study sessions, sports, orchestra schedule updates, pickups, and emergencies, all of which I've had to do since the start of this school year. And as a mom who travels for work out of state often, that matters to me. It's not just convenience, it's a peace of mind. Since 2015, when my oldest started school in NEISD, Texas legislators have passed numerous laws affirming parental rights, from whether my children can choose whether to get vaccines, to opting out of certain curriculum topics, to influencing library book selections. Parents now have expanded access to instructional material, the ability to exempt their children from health and sex education, and even a say in custodial-related therapy sessions. If lawmakers trust parents with these critical choices, why not trust us and the leaders we choose to run our school board when it comes to a reasonable cell phone policy? Is TEA trying to punish NEISD for complying with a poorly written law? The district defined the school day in a way that supports learning and family communication. And based on my own anecdotal research, there has been no spike in discipline issues, no parental complaints, and our teachers say our students are more focused. Instead of threatening compliance reviews, TEA should be engaged in dialogue. NEISD policy works. It reflects the voices of parents like me. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
Number 4.
I have reference handouts for.
If you would like to hand those to Ms. Turner over there next to the column.
Hello and good evening. I would first like to thank this board, committee, and community for this opportunity. I am here today to speak to the revision of NEISD School cell phone policy derived from HB 1481, sometimes also known as the Texas Schools Cell Phone Ban. In the bill, schools are given a choice to either prohibit school cell phone devices on school property entirely or to designate a method of storage for student communication devices during the school day. I believe our superintendent and board has done a wonderful job in their collaboration with the community, listening to parents and student feedback, which molded their decision of the trustees to limit our school day to instructional time, as is well within their authority to do. I stand firmly with the district's decision to allow the use of electronic communication devices during non-instructional times like passing periods and lunch. However, I believe that there are also shortfalls in the overall writing of the bill at the state level in HB 1481 and within our own policy. I learned recently from being around various teachers from different high schools here in our district that we are all doing something a little bit different, which could of course come with its own problems. I also believe that what we are missing is 1, protection for our teachers and administrators, and 2, congruence between the schools within the district for disciplinary procedures and in-class storage and prevention of unlawful use methods. Some of the ways I would like to propose protection for teachers and administrators and congruence between schools are 1, introducing an agreement contract between the parents and guardians, the schools, and our district, outlining the policy and procedures, reference item number 3. Also, having clearer protocols and procedures to follow when students enter and exit each classroom that are succinct, effective, and not time-consuming, reference item number 1. And a standard outline of information should be collected and kept with the phone when confiscated. Implementation keeps organization, provides a chain of custody, and enhances the ability of the school to return student devices at the end of the school day when confiscations do occur, reference item number 2. The goal of these implementations would be to disallow our AP offices from being overwhelmed with referrals from repeat policy violators on the same day in different class periods, place more responsibility on the students and parents rather than the classroom teachers, and enforce a solidified management system with protection for the teachers and administrators who are working through consequences of policy violations and eventually eliminate the number of confiscations throughout the school day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5.
Good evening, board members and district staff. How are the attorneys interpreting the law? You were instructed by TEA to determine what was considered instructional hours and to make your own rules about the cell phone policy. At this time, some schools do not allow cell phones use at all, while some allow them only during passing periods and lunch. Now TEA is basically saying you're not following the rules and to implement a complete cell phone ban. What are the rules? Why didn't they define and instruct you what they wanted implemented from the beginning instead of saying you defined them, then now saying you're wrong? This has gone from one extreme of overusing cell phones to the extreme of no cell phones at all. Why can't we meet in the middle and balance it out? We have 3 students in 3 different schools in the district, and I can tell you as they get older, it gets more difficult to communicate about them being sick, staying after school activities at last minute, or practices ending or running late, ending early and running late. We recently had a child who got sick and it worsened throughout the school day. And when he was at football practice, he felt he was going to pass out. He had to sit under the sun and heat, feeling terrible. We did not find out until after we picked him up. If we would have known, we would have picked him up earlier. If a parent calls the front office to ask about their child, how they're doing, if they're feeling worse or not, we're told they will send a note to the classroom and we will find out later. If you expect the students to go to the front office to communicate with parents, how often would you allow this to happen? During what periods? What if something needs immediate attention? How do you handle that? Will you have long lines of students waiting to use the front office cell phone, front office, or designate a phone just for that? While students need to focus on learning and not being distracted by cell phones, we do live in different times and need communication. While some would say that is what the staff is for, unfortunately, the staff don't always provide the parents the actual facts and on the spot, as recently happened in another district, which lead us to provide cell phones to our students to better communicate in case of emergencies. Also, monkey see, monkey do. You have teachers and administrators using their cell phones a lot. How about leading by example and not use cell phones during instructional periods as well, and not using cell phones while walking the halls? You even had a district police and administrator constantly on the phones at sporting events instead of watching the areas and doors. And if you do not believe me, I can show you. I asked for the board members to go to the schools and games unannounced to see for yourselves, read more about the laws and rules implemented, and being more knowledgeable instead of just going by the district attorney says. Whether there is guidance, litigation, grievances, and complaints, the attorney gets paid and is very expensive. Because I don't think the attorney will offer 2 for 1 hour or buy one, get one free hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 6.
Good evening. My name is Katie Wilkie, and I'm a parent in Northeast. Thank you so much for your service to our schools. I'm also here to strongly support NEISD's right to keep local control over our cell phone policies and to push back against efforts by state lawmakers and TEA to impose a one-size-fits-all policy that doesn't fit the reality of our local campuses. Cell phone policies aren't simple, and we trust you, our school board and district leadership, to find a balance. Something that promotes focus and learning without ignoring the real-life needs of our families and our students, which you have already done. What's troubling is the pressure coming from Austin. Threats, shaming, and pushing to take power out of your hands. That's not leadership, that's not democracy, and frankly, that's not how public servants should be treating each other. Elected school board members are not subordinates of the legislature. You are accountable to this community, not to political pressure from Austin. Our schools are not pawns in ideological battles, and you don't need lawmakers telling you how to do your job. This is really about more than phones. It's about who gets to decide how our schools are run. And I believe that power belongs right here in this room, not in Austin. So I urge you, please stand your ground, keep the control local, and show that NEISD won't be bullied into policies that don't serve our students. Thank you for standing up for our students, local decision-making, and our community. We have your back.
Thank you.
Number 7.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Jare Williams, and I'm a mother of a high school student and an elementary student in the Johnson and Reagan clusters within NEISD. In addition to the other comments you've heard, I'm especially concerned about the impact of restrictive policies on students with documented anxiety or emotional needs. For some, the ability to briefly communicate with a parent or loved one can make a meaningful difference in helping them regulate their emotions and successfully get through the school day. This is particularly important for military-connected children like mine, whose parents may be frequently called away for duty or deployed. Maintaining occasional contact provides reassurance and stability that supports their emotional well-being and focus in class. If you do make changes to the policy, I encourage that students with documented emotional or medical needs, including anxiety disorders, should have individualized accommodations, allowing discrete, appropriate phone access when necessary to self-regulate. But I encourage you not to change the policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 8.
Good evening. I just want to first say thank you to all the parents who showed up to speak. It's super important to be engaged with your school board, and I'm proud of you for coming. Good evening. I'm not going to express any opinion on the law, except to express that I really appreciate part of your policy where you, instead of paying a bunch of money to have things locked up, like a lot of the districts are doing, you're letting kids put them off and away in their backpacks, and that's good and that's compliant with the law. It is, unfortunately, for those who oppose the bill or the law, it is crystal clear that the law does require bell to bell all day. You can see that because of the bill that they first filed and the bill that they changed. They changed the wording from instructional minutes or instructional time to school day. It's not going to be easy or loved by everyone. But, and I remember when hearing the layout, I was like, oh man, those kids use these calculators on their phone for math. That's going to be hard. And then, in health class, they spend the whole class looking up definitions on their cell phone. What are they going to do there? So I thought, let's invest in a dictionary stock or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, the TEA, though, in its guidance that came out in July, had suggested that you communicate to parents the academic reasons for a phone-free environment. Many children who have gone to other places where they have, instead of NEISD, where they have phone-free environments, have ended up thriving. But there is a policy problem that I perceive in your student-parent handbook, which prohibits kids from using office phone or a phone on campus. And I found that to be kind of odd. It was like in the old days, it was no big deal, and it wasn't kids really lining up, fortunately, but I think there will be a transition time period. Your SHAC, which is operated by parents, was actually preparing to propose a phone ban. They had interviewed Bradley and other principals at several other schools who had had great success with a phone ban and no complaints from parents. And so it's interesting that that's what the parents on your committee were about to advise you to do, but then the law passed. They didn't need to come through with that recommendation. At a time when we're asking for a whole lot of money, I just want to make sure that we're not spending money on legal expenses for a case that we may not have a good chance on. There are Texas Supreme Court decisions that make it very clear that you cannot go against the plain language of the law. For example, in Bank Direct Capital versus Plasma Fab, the court says plain language disallows ad-libbing, a cardinal principle that we have reaffirmed regularly. The Texas Supreme Court saying we regularly do this. In Molinet versus Kimbrell, they say the plain meaning of the text is the best expression of legislative intent. What I don't understand is why your agenda is just discussion only and not action, because you are the only ones that set your policy and decide if you want to take legal action, and you're not even able to do that today. So if I were you, I would ask, that we could maybe rectify that and actually do what is your job, which is to take votes and take action.
That's time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody coming and speaking this evening. So this item's placed on the agenda after we received a letter from the TEA on September 24th. But prior to that, we received a letter from Senator Donna Campbell expressing her desire for us to revisit this policy, and we are the only ones that can change this policy, the 7 of us. Then followed that, September 24th, received a letter from TEA notifying us that there was an investigation underway, and in that letter just asked us to respond by October 1st. So we responded to TEA on October 1st. At the bottom of that, you all received a copy of that letter. It's a public letter. That we did invite somebody from TEA to join us at this meeting so we could have some dialogue and discussion with TEA. To my understanding, we have not either received a response or they declined. But the intent was so that we could ask, we've been advised by our attorney what our policy states, and that we've all been confident and that we've moved forward in a productive manner with our community and our staff and our teachers. So we provided that response October 1st, and then subsequent to that, last Friday, October 3rd, we received an additional letter from some legislative members outlining the difference between or explaining their intent with the passage of that law. So we brought this forward because we have provided a response to TEA. At this point, there was no, reason to provide any or take any action on the policy, but I did want to make sure that we outline what has happened, what has transpired, so that our community can understand what we've received, what we've responded with, and then allow us to ask some questions of either Dr. Micah, our staff, or Mr. Lopez, our district's attorney, to just understand what the steps are going forward, what our responsibilities are to the community, to ourselves, to the state, and go from there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Micah, who I think has a few things he'd like to say and present to us, and then we'll open it up for some questions and comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I guess for those of you on this board, you guys know this, but maybe there's some folks in the community that aren't aware. We started restricting cell phones long before House Bill 1481 was passed. I approached one of our principals last year at a high school because I guess you could say I was reading the tea leaves, that there was something coming. And so I approached him and I said, would you be interested in piloting a program about restricting cell phones? And he said, I would love that. And I said, look, here's the only ask that I have. I don't want to tell you how to do it. As many of you on this board have been around for a long time, I've referred to, yes, we're the Northeast community, but we have 7 very distinct communities when we look at Churchill or Roosevelt or Madison, and we really need to work within those communities to find things that we can all, what I call points of convergence, where we can converge to say this makes sense for us all. And so he started working on one, along with all 14 middle schools. And again, all I asked is work with parents, work with staff, and work with kids. Through the most, and I see Miss Bass is here this evening. Miss Bass is the student voice sponsor at one of our high schools. She knows, because she was in all of those meetings with me, that this was a topic that I used throughout the year with our students. As a reminder to the Board of Trustees, when we redid the grievance policy a while ago, it was actually the students who helped us make a flow chart that made sense. So I love going because the complexity that our youth has today that they're dealing with, quite frankly, is very different than what I grew up with. It just is. And so through that student voice, I captured the complexity of their lives. And they said, and where we could all agree is, cell phones during classroom time just shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't. When I listened to principals talk about the meetings that they had at their campuses, they said parents can all agree that, but then they went through and listed times. So for instance, one of our student voice kiddos said, hey, Dr. Micah, I have to call my grandpa every day at a certain time because my dad isn't allowed to call and he has to take his insulin. And so when you take things like that out, or from a parent who says, I don't want you taking my child's phone in the case of an emergency, and it's sad that we have to think like that in today's world, but I want to be able to know that they're okay. So in listening to all of this and watching all 15 of those schools start out and do it, and again, just for the audience, you know, I meet with those principals. I do what's called focus meetings. So I was meeting with middle school and high school folks, talking to them about things that they were dealing with, right? How is it going? Because each one of those schools did it a little bit different. And they did a little different because they worked with their communities on where were their points that they could all agree on. One middle school is 0 at all. One said, we're going to allow 5 minutes during lunchtime for them to check in. So they all sort of did it. And the miracle thing, guys, is I only got one complaint the whole year. Last year, the whole year, before House Bill 1481 ever came out. And the only time is when one school, even though parents said, we don't want you taking our child's phone, they thought they were going to start doing it. And the parent was very upset by that because, again, they said, I want to be able to communicate them if there's an emergency. And so led to another campus who then at January decided they wanted to try it. Great. Go right ahead. There's no bill yet. But again, because I don't, and these guys do not run our campuses from here. We set up some parameters, we set up some guidelines, but we rest on our leaders at our campuses to work with their staff, work with their parents, work with their students to come up with things that make sense for them. So again, we just laid out and said, great, you want to do it? I'm fine, but work with your parents, work with your kiddos, work with your staff to come up with something. Mr. Bywater, who's sitting in the office, and I'm sorry, Mr. Byer, but I think it's important we tell our story a little bit of how we got here. Mr. Bywaters and I were in Austin quite a bit. In fact, every legislator who's listed on that list, we were in their office. Everyone. And we talked about this exact issue. And I reiterated to them all, here's what we're doing, here's how it's working, here is where we found our points of convergence. Jacob's sitting in the audience. Jacob, did we ever have any pushback? No, sir. Nobody pushed back on what we were doing. In fact, many of them were like, well, that makes sense. So when House Bill 1481 passed, and I read it. Now look, I want to read something because I think it's important. In this law, this really kind of shows how they do, and in my opinion, what I thought was for me, quite frankly. I thought they wrote a part of this bill for me. So page 2 of House Bill 1481, in subsection D, they said in this section, personal communication device means A, and they put it in, telephone, cell phone, such as a smartphone or flip phone, tablet, smartwatch, radio device, paging device, or any other electronic device capable of telecommunication or digital communication. Well, okay, and then they go on, the term does not include electronic device provided to a student by a school district or open enrollment charter school. See, they defined it very clear in the law. This is what we mean. But when you go back to the front page and you read where they start section 37.082 student use, and they put in here that the Board of Trustees of a school district or of an body of an open enrollment charter school shall adopt, implement, and ensure the district or school complies with a written policy prohibiting a student from using a personal communication device while on school property during the school day. Well, they never define those words. And I checked with Mr. Lopez when this bill was passed, and I said, okay, if I read this, they don't define those days, and we looked at the guidance that we received from TEA that actually encouraged districts to define those terms. So I really believe that they actually carved it out because of what Mr. Bywaters and I went to Austin to convey was the story of Northeast and how 16 of our schools worked with parents, worked with their staff, worked with their students to put something that we could all support. Look at anecdotally, I heard one of our speakers tonight anecdotally did some research on discipline, right? Anecdotally, I've just done some research based on the number of email complaints I've received since we implemented it. Until this whole little thing kind of bubbled up, I didn't get a 1. Quite frankly, not a 1. And so I felt like we partnered with our parents. Before SB 12 told me I had to, we just did it because that's what's right and that's what we believe in this district. Now look, I'm looking at a parent in the audience. We don't always agree, and that's okay. But it is. See, that's what misses today. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean we have to be against each other. We just have to disagree, and it's okay, right? But we're going to continue to work together. That's what we do because that's what it requires of us, right? And so when I look at this, I just think it's unfortunate because I feel like we did it all right. And now look, this is a proposed finding. Or Mr. Lopez, what's the exact term I'm looking for? It's an allegation of a notice of an alleged violation. Doesn't say you violated it. We wrote, Mr. Lopez and I worked together to create a 4-page response back to the agency, which we have not heard a response from. So right now it stands as an alleged violation. There has been no violation. So there's no real cause for you to act at this point. But again, I'm proud of the work that those 16 schools did last year. I'm proud of the work that they engaged with their staff, with their kids, with their communities and their parents to come up with things that they could get around to make it make sense. But our young people, folks, today, now look, it's so weird, and I'll just tell you, I got this article sent to me, actually from a legislative office that I promised I would not reveal who it came from. But it says the counterintuitive advice about kids and phones makes a lot of sense. And I was like, well, that's a weird one, considering what I'm going through, but okay. And so I read the article, and I'd be happy to share it with you all. What it talks about is we should treat phones or any sort of electronic devices as like we're teaching a child to ride a bike. When you first issue a child a phone or some type of electronic device, you shouldn't give it to them and let them go. There should be a purpose to it. You start out with maybe as a young child, rather than just letting them scroll and watch endlessly, you let them look at pictures of family. And then as they get older, you give them one application to do something. And you're teaching them that it is a device and how to use it so that we don't end up with a bunch of kids just staring at a phone like this all day, which is what we have, right? So you use it to actually, and they say, the person who was in part quoted in this article says, yeah, I gave my kid a phone at 3, but I showed them how to use it, and now they're responsible digital citizens because I showed them how. I bring that up because that's how we're doing it. Elementary school isn't handing kids, look, one, we don't issue phones to kids, just for the record, okay? But elementary doesn't have an issue. Kids aren't having their phones out and doing. Well, they shouldn't, right? By middle school, there's a little bit at those middle schools of flexibility. Why? Because their lives are starting to become a little more complex. They're playing sports, they're in band, they're going to go on this trip or whatever, sure. But by the time they hit middle school, their lives are complex. They're working jobs, high school, they're working jobs, they're picking up siblings, they're helping get groceries, they're doing all of these other things, including, like we heard, Mr. Jarrett sent me or talked to me about one parent whose child is in youth symphony downtown, right? Choir. And sometimes they contact them at the last minute and they need to communicate it to the parent. Well, that's what that allows, that flexibility during passing and lunchtime to do. And again, no parent ever argues with me that their child should have their phone out of sight during instruction time. And look, some of you know this, but we've had some opportunities this year where people said, well, with AP testing, they text, they multi-factor authenticate, they need to have access to text. And we've said, no, we're not going to allow cell phones out during instruction. We've found another way to do it, through email. We've had band directors say, hey, we want to let them use their phone because there's an app that allows them to listen to playing, and then it gives them feedback. And I've said, no, so we're finding a way around that. So we're finding ways to keep the phone out, but still be responsive to our kids and our communities and our parents. And I think that's what we've been able to do. And look, and I'm going to end with this. You know, I've listened to you're the only one or this. I'm going to go back to what I was quoted in the Express News. I really don't care what anybody else does. I just don't. Because I don't answer to their communities. I don't know what some district in West Texas is doing, nor do I care. I don't. Because I answer to the parents in this room who spoke up tonight, and every other parent, to the students who choose to come to our schools, and to you all. That's who I answer to. And I feel like at this point, we've listened, and we've done some things that make some sense. It's unfortunate that while those lawmakers who seem to agree with us had a change of heart, I guess. But that's really where it is. We're just kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to hear back from the agency. At which time, once we hear, I'm going to let you guys know. We're going to let the community know. And you all, as the ladies and gentlemen of the board, are going to make a decision. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Micah. And I would reiterate that, you know, nothing is going to be perfect, and this policy is not perfect, and I don't think we'll ever write a perfect policy. But it seems to be working. My own anecdotal evidence of having a student in this district right now, it's working with her and her peers. And so I think, you know, if there is a time that we have to revisit this thing, either from being told to, or we find policy holes that we need to address, my thought is that's the time that we bring this forward and take some action on it and look at it. And so, you know, until then, we have something in place, and I think it's something that everybody seems to be okay with. And we all, I think, can collectively agree that we don't think it belongs in the classroom during instructional time, for sure. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions for Dr. Mike or others. Ms. Landry.
Okay, so a couple of questions. Probably dating myself, but years ago, we had a phone in every classroom. So the teacher had a phone, a hardwired phone. Does that exist anymore?
Not in every school, and not in every classroom.
But
It
some
does-
schools and some
Some,
classrooms.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, one of our speakers mentioned prohibiting the use of the district phones for emergencies. How do we handle situations where students need to contact their parent or guardian during the school day if they're unable to use the district phones?
Ms. Landry, typically a student will ask permission to go to the front office, and if they speak to an administrator at that point, to ask if they could call a parent because of whatever the issue is. That's typically what occurs.
And so do we typically allow that if it's in the handbook that it's prohibited?
And I'm not familiar with that piece on the handbook. I believe that if we said it's there, I don't know if that was the intention for that, because I know even back when I was a principal in our district long time ago also, we did allow that, because things do come up and not every kid, especially at that time, had a cell phone.
And I'll provide more anecdotal evidence. My son was forced to do that for several years in middle school, so he was able to use the office phone. He didn't like it, but that's what he had to do.
And anecdotally, my child went to their teacher and their teacher texted me. But, so, I know that we've had opportunities. I understand as a parent, especially in today's climate, I would want my kid to have a phone, access to a phone. I know that there have been some false alarms at some schools where things were reported and the parents showed up in droves to check on their kids, and it just ensued in chaos. And having that security of, hey, I heard something's going on, are you okay? For me, that's peace of mind. Actually ended up talking to quite a few families this weekend who were very much in favor of having the phones during passing periods, during lunchtime, immediately after school, so the kids could say, hey, can I go to the football game tonight, or whatever they have to do. So, and saying that, Mr. Lopez, you assured us that we're within the law based on the bill and the definitions provided. I didn't see anything in there that said bell to bell.
It's not in there. They didn't define those terms, which is why TEA's initial guidance told school districts to define it. And then also, when you look at, you never read a bill in a vacuum. You always look at it with respect to other portions of the education code. And there are two provisions in the education code that have been around for decades that say that where something is not specifically enumerated or delegated by law to the agency or to the State Board of Education, which in this case it was not, then the decisions rest with the local Board of Trustees. So there's that element of local control that you have to make those decisions where the legislature did not specifically define what was meant by the terms used in that particular bill.
All right. The only thing else I'd say is we've had students tell us that phones are a distraction, and there might need to be some tightening up on the times that they are able to use it. I did have a person tell me that their student leaves the class several times throughout the day to call and ask if they can go home on a daily basis. And so there might be some opportunities for some schools to tighten up that process, but I think that I personally would keep it the way it is.
And Miss Landry, like with that child in particular, there's a great opportunity for us to partner with the parent. Have the parent reach out, let the school know, hey, this is what's happening. Because I will tell you, one of the things that I've seen over time is teachers get up, and I've seen parents get upset when the kid wasn't allowed to go to because of a restroom and we didn't know they had some sort of medical thing, right? And so that's that opportunity again, come together, talk, let's make a plan together, and we can rectify that, right? And again, no perfect policy, but always opportunities to get better.
Ms. Gigi, or somebody, Ms. Villarreal, and then we'll go to.
Yes. I find it ironic that we're living in a climate where we're being told that we don't respect parental rights, and they actually mandated that we respect parental rights, which in what I've witnessed in NEISD is that's something that we do respect. But yet we have legislators that are playing bullies, and they're coming in when we're saying that we do not want to separate these children for 8 hours away from their parents. So I find it extremely difficult to understand how that respects the rights of parents and children. So I do not bend the knee to bullies. I will never bend the knee to a bully. So, and I feel like this is a move by TEA and these legislators to grandstand. And I feel like they put our parents in the crosshairs. And I, for one, stand by what I said yes to when we voted for this. Because, you know, God forbid that we had something happen in one of our schools and our children could not reach out to a parent. I couldn't live with myself. So I'm standing by my vote, and I will not be bullied. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. Ms. Gigi, you had a couple questions, and Ms. Cox will get to you.
Well, not questions, actually. So I've been on the board a little more than a year, and typically when we have an item, really I get about the same number. If I get emails, I get about the same, and some of them are just to me, and some of them are to the whole board. About the same for as there are against, because lots of us have differing opinions. I have never, and I assume the board is saying the same thing, I haven't talked to them about it, never received as many emails for an item on our agenda as I have this week. So my constituents and our constituents have loudly said to us through email and in the grocery store and wherever I see them, please hold firm, we like the policy. And the thing I like about the policy is, in this day and age, I think we're struggling to find compromise. And I'm someone who likes to listen to all sides and try to get a win-win. And unfortunately, there are times when we just don't do that. It's this side or this side. I feel like this policy is a compromise. We're working to protect the instructional time. And at one time I was a supervisor of student teachers, so I was in classrooms a lot in high school. And my poor student teachers could not get the kids to put the phones away, and they couldn't get them to focus on their instruction, and it really did not serve them well. So there's a strong need to not have it during instructional time. But based on everything you all have said and you all have said, I think we've hit a very good compromise.
Thank you. Mrs. Cox?
Yes, thank you, David. I think there's really three issues or three components to this, to the way I see it. Three responsibilities, I guess. One of those, of course, is a responsibility to compliance, which I am completely 100% sure that we are in compliance, to the simple fact that the plain language does not define school day. And decisions and legislation and policy, I wasn't elected to vote on policy based on an understanding or an intent. The other responsibility is to parents and students, which I feel like we're meeting. I am all for cell phones being used in the correct places and not being where they're distractions. And I think this bill, or our policy, which is in compliance, it takes care of that. You have students at school that's kind of their safety net. I've seen that firsthand on my campus. They may not have a 504, but it's kind of just their way out if they need to get in touch with someone or have a distraction during lunch. And whether we like it or not, the toothpaste is already out of the tube, right? As someone said to me recently. The other one, and one that perhaps bothers me the most, is the responsibility to local control. As one of our speakers mentioned, we're here to take care of our communities, and we're not subordinates of the legislators in Austin, and we know what's best for our communities. And if we're given a bill that doesn't define a term, and we're not given that mandate from the TEA, then why are we not in compliance? You know, this is either a poorly written bill, or the legislator didn't want to define those terms, and there must have been some sort of purpose for that. So I am quite sure that we're in compliance, and I have no plans to change the policy.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, if you have a minute, I have a couple of more objective questions.
Sure.
Well, the first one is, can you just generally state what TEA's comment was why we're not in compliance? Like what was we've got the letter, but if you're able to explain for the audience, why are we not in compliance?
Their contention is that we don't have the discretion to define the terms in the statute, and that it is meant to be a bell-to-bell cell phone ban, which means that students would not be permitted to use the cell phone or have the cell phone on school property. And so their position is that school day piece means bell to bell, opening bell to end of school bell. And so that's their contention, which kind of goes against what their own guidance had previously provided. And so that's what they're going to review. They're going to have the response from the district, and at some point they'll issue whatever their finding is going to be.
Right. And so speaking of that, segue into what is the process that sort of normally plays out with this type of open investigation?
So TEA will either issue a finding that there's been no violation, or they will issue some sort of a finding that there is some sort of violation for which they're going to mandate that the district take some form of corrective action. Usually it's just, they call it a notice of corrective actions, and they will implement what they expect the school district to do and by when they expect it to be done. And that's what they'll do.
And do they have a time frame by which they have to respond to our response?
They do not.
Okay.
No.
So this could be
tomorrow,
or
it could be tomorrow, it could be a year from now. I have handled complaints in this type of area where on governance issues with TEA, they get a lot of different complaints from all over the state. They're backed up. Some of them you don't hear back for a year or more.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we didn't really hit that at the very beginning about sort of why we are not considered.
Right.
I think we all sort of understand why we're not in compliance, according to them.
Yeah.
According to TEA, but just wanted to reiterate that fact. So anybody have any other questions or statements related to this? I did want to say that I think it's been spoken multiple times that we get hung up on cell phone policies, we get hung up on library books, we get hung up on 10 Commandments. Really, we had a speaker talk about it, which has been set up here multiple times, that I think the erosion of the local control is sort of one of those things that is disturbing to those of us up here, and we've heard a lot of people in the community talk about that as well. It's sort of continually, systematically sort of tying our hands while allowing other entities to be able to go forward with things. And I think we're in a position to where we've heard our community, we've talked to our staff, we've listened to our students, and we've come up with a good plan, something that is reasonable, something that allows flexibility. And again, the idea that you're allowed to have it at lunch and at passing periods, that's the baseline. We have schools that ban it all day. We heard that from other speakers as well. And so we allow our communities within their schools, within their neighborhoods, to sort of help to define what that is for them and what works best for them. So, I appreciate everybody listening to this. I appreciate our staff for looking into it, Dr. Micah for recounting all this. and my fellow colleagues for looking at it and sort of objectively understanding, where we are. So at this point, we have sent a response to TEA. As Mr. Lopez and Dr. Mike have said, we're going to wait to hear back what that is, and at that time, we'll have conversations then. But, until then, unless we find something that that will require us to change the policy or amend the policy, I think we have what we have, and people are generally happy with it. So, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, Mr. Byer, just because I don't want to belabor this thing, but I just want you all to know tomorrow this is going to matter nothing in my world, because I'm going to go back to doing what I told you all last month, focusing on academics. If you're not following, there's districts all over this state in real trouble with TEA because of poor performance in the classroom. So tomorrow, this just gets put on the shelf until I hear something again, because we have real work to do. Whether it's all that other stuff, Mr. Byer, you were talking about, listen, we're going to go back to doing it. And I appreciated with one speaker and said about money and buying it. Look, folks, it cost us, and I'll just remind you when we did this, $1.2 million to give every kid a pouch to put it in. Why would I want to recommend that we pay $1.2 million for a pouch when we could put $1.2 million back in a classroom to impact young lives? Like, I'm going to always default there and not do those types, which I always think, well, if that's what we're trying to be encouraged, whose pocket are we lining? And I just wonder about stuff like that, right? So just know that my commitment and those folks over to my right, you guys, tomorrow we're just going to get back to doing what's best for kids until we hear something, because that's the real work, is making sure that our students continue to progress along, because no matter what piece of data you're going to see this year, there's always some places that we could do better, and we're always going to keep working on how to get better. Thank you.
And thank you again to the folks that came to speak to us tonight and everybody that emailed. I know not everybody's on the same page in the community. We've received sort of emails on both sides of this, and feedback is always helpful. So whether you come in person, whether you email us, thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right.
Can I
Yes,
add
Ms. Landry.
Just
Yep.
one more thing. In Senator Campbell's letter to us, she did indicate that the intent of the policy or the bill was to ban the use from bell to bell. And so if somebody can respond to her and find out the compelling reason behind that intent, I'd like to know that. And I don't know who would do that on our behalf, or...
I mean, I can ask Mr. Bywaters to reach out. But again, I think that if that were the intent, Ms. Landry, then they should have defined it in law.
I completely
Like,
understand.
I'm just going to always default back to how they define personal communication device. Obviously, it took them a while to define and take out transmitter or whatever else, other language, right? And so to me, sometimes I just want to say, just write a better bill. Like, just write a better bill. If you write a better bill and you take the time, and again, I made myself available multiple times in Austin to our legislators talking about this. I would have been happy to help them define if they wanted to. Mr. Jarrett and I have helped TA with guidance before, so we've had those opportunities, and I think if we would have been presented this, I would have given them that feedback. You might want to do that, if that's really what you're trying to do. But again, even the guidance said, feel free to define it. We encourage districts to define it, the school day and school property.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think we covered that one thoroughly, but I wanted to make sure our community and everybody had an update as to where all that stood. So appreciate everybody's time in that. We're going to go back to item A, which is the TASB 2025 recap. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I did want to just give a quick overview of myself and Ms. Shelton, Dr. Micah, and Mr. Jarrett attended in Houston a few weeks ago. And so we were just each going to give sort of a couple of bullet points of what we heard while we were there and some things maybe to look forward to for those of us that weren't able to attend. So just starting with mine, I guess. Couple of things I did, I mentioned it last month, but the policy updates, and we have some on the agenda for tonight. There are a lot of things legally and locally that are happening with our policies. So everybody please pay attention to those as they come through. I think it's tomorrow, but I may be mistaken. I think TASB is hosting a webinar, and I'll see if I can work with Peggy and if we can find it. I don't remember if it's tomorrow or next week. But they were going to have a webinar that would kind of go through kind of an update. I sat through a couple of classes that talked about policy updates. There's everything from grievances to I think when we can have meetings, how we might have to vote going forward, a lot of those types of things. Another one I went to was about new board member onboarding, which would have been very helpful to have last year when I had 4 new members come on board. I think there's some really good things that I'm going to sit down with Dr. Micah and Mrs. Turner and for future board elections and new members. I think there's some really good things where we can hopefully meter out some of the information that we slam people in the face with. So it was good topics. I think it was good sort of relationship building. I had breakfast with a colleague in another district in College Station. And was able to catch up with her and kind of what they're doing and some things that she thought was interesting about our district. So start doing that. I just lost the word. Collaborating, yes. So it's always good to have no other people in other school boards, see how they're doing it. So Ms. Shelton, I'll turn it over to you if you've got a couple things you want to update us on.
Yes, I had the opportunity to attend several sessions as well, talked about the legislation, what came down and what that means for us. And it was really, really good and very powerful. There were two sessions though that were really, or I'm going to say 4 now that I'm looking at my paper. There was one on religion in schools and the evolution of parental rights, which is very helpful for me as a backstory, just trying to understand what happened in our public schools, how we got to where we are. It was very, very helpful. There was a session on effective superintendent evaluations. I was all ears, Micah. No. So that was a really good one. And there was also another really good one on superintendent burnout and how you help have balance. And I really did think a lot about Dr. Micah because his first text from me sometimes is at 5 a.m, right? So, and I'm sure I'm not the only person talking to him. So they were talking about strategies and ways that we can help keep our superintendent balanced so they don't burn out and, run off to Canada, never to be seen again. And right? And then the Caribbean, never to be seen again. So that was really good and some things I want to share with us as we, think about how we support Dr. Micah. Then the last one that was so much fun was about competing in this new marketplace and the things that we can be doing to just really embrace our community more and have their voice amplified and create some excitement around the day. And the most fun thing about that one was kindergarten signing day. You know how the kids go when they pick their schools, they pick the hat. Well, this one district, they do kindergarten signing day. So when the kid signs up, they go, they get the little T-shirt and they sign. They probably print that they're coming. They draw symbols, right? It was really great, but they talked about having champions and leveraging champions within your community to really help the community. Dr. Micah, at his, the very first, can I say bond? I can say bond, right? Yeah. Okay. What can I say? The very first bond session that I heard him go to, that I went to and heard him speak, he talked about what we were doing, but then he said, at the end of the day, I'm just a steward of your schools. I'm a steward of your property and your buildings. And I heard that in this. Like, our parents, our community, we are the stewards of these schools that educate our children. And how do we get them more involved? And it's little things like helping them to be the champion so they can be the ambassador. I look at the parents in the front row, and I remember the first time I saw them and how we saw them and I saw them at a bond meeting, and I see them at school board. So how do we get people engaged and committed to what we're doing and help and steer us in the right direction? So it was very, very good. I appreciate the opportunity to go.
Good. Mr. Jarrett?
So I appreciate all of that, and actually I went to a couple of sessions, and one of them, we went together, Mr. Byer and Ms. Sheldon, and really that was the legislator Dan Patrick's, and two takeaways I had from that I have to walk away with and really embrace the idea, what is it that we're trying to get to as a state? And I think what I walked away with was this one idea, is that the industry demand is going to drive our decisions in education. And I really can't argue that, but I walked away with how do we operationalize that and leverage our CTE programs to make sure that we're offering programs that are relevant for the next generation workforce. The other thing that came out of that I was I smiled a little bit about, is that they're looking to invest about $3 billion towards teacher prep programs. And I smile about that because we've all heard Dr. Micah talk about, we don't have a teacher shortage issue, we have a teacher quality shortage issue. And so by investing in a prep program, it just gives me this thought that every kid can stand in front of a great teacher every single day. And so that was one that I walked away with. And then the other one that was kind of exciting for me was I went to an AI session. And I know it scares a lot of people, and I get that. But the reason I went to it is because when we talk about digital citizenship, it's about how do we do things responsibly and consider the age of a child. And so it's tiering a system so we can help educate our children to use AI responsibly and not use it as a crutch or a tool. And so I did walk away with some nuggets, and I really wanted to give kudos to our staff who have been working really hard on a handbook that aligned very well with this whole idea of using it in a responsible way and not just to get answers. And so those were the ones that really jumped out to me. And then I know Dr. Mike is going to talk about one that we had an opportunity to visit with a gentleman, so I'll turn it over to him.
You could have kept going, but okay. I take that time, Tacit Tasby is that 1 or 2 times a year that there's a lot of folks in an area at once. And so I always take advantage of that. So what Mr. Jarrett was alluding to is you all know that books and the content and how you screen them and all of these things, right, are really a huge challenge for now our classrooms, for librarians, and all these different folks. Well, I had actually connected with this gentleman a little bit beforehand, but quite frankly, I was a little hesitant about it. I just didn't, it was, they reached out through this weird way to my email, and I had like a chat with them one day, and I just thought, I don't know. Well, he happened to be at this event. I knew somebody there that actually knew them. And so I was able to connect with them, have a little chat about it, and then realized, in fact, so we spent some time talking about how they're using AI to basically checkbooks so that it's no longer having to read, because I can't remember, Mr. Jarrett, how many books have we got in our collection?
Per camp, about 11,000 books
Yeah,
per library.
per library.
Yes, sir.
So you can take and do the math, right, to all of them. But they're how this company is doing it. Long story short, he actually came into town today to meet with Mr. Jarrett and I. And I don't think you're going to pay a dime for this. I think we're going to actually do it with them to help them build this program that makes it make sense. We're going to ask some librarians to go along with us, but to help build this along with them so that, because look, you guys know this, human error comes into it, right? This will give us, and look, it's not going to tell you no or yes, it's going to flag things for you so that you know how to deeper dive into it and then connect it to others. I loved what he ended with because I'm not telling you who he is or anything, but he shared with us he was dyslexic. And he said, my real goal is that I want to get to a point with this that we can curate individual reading lists for kids. So that he goes, I know if somebody would have done this for me, I'd have been a better reader. But my real ultimate goal is to really be able to do this so that we can put together these lists of books for students that they can go to and say, you can read all of these and the parent feels good about them as well, right? So that was one. The other one I spent a lot of time on is, as you guys know, we're piloting this moonshot model that's going on in 2 of our schools. One of that is we had to transform those classrooms. So again, there's all these folks in a room, so I was able to sit with a few different people about alternative ways, if that were the way we went as a school district, how to do it at scale and cheaper. And so I really took some of the things that we're working on in our struggles and tried to find connections, because oftentimes the sessions that are offered aren't covering the topics that I need covered for me personally. So I go out and use and connect with people in the area to help me solve my problems of practice that we're working through. So those were a couple of the things, Mr. Byer, I spent my time doing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for the updates. We'll have to add one. Mr. Jarrett and I, the session he referenced where we sat and listened to Lieutenant Governor, that it was a little bit eye-opening also on the side that they talk about STAR was a big thing this year, and everybody said he wanted to get rid of STAR, and so he turned to the audience and said, "Are you not happy we got rid of STAR?" And I think the collective, it wasn't a groan, but it was kind of like, no, that wasn't exactly. We were looking for accountability and trying to talk about accountability. STAR is a STAR. It has its own issues, but it's about how we use that information. And it's a reminder to be very specific about what you're asking for when we're starting to advocate for different things at legislation. Really looking at what is it we're trying to get, not just, oh, we need to get rid of STAR. It's like we need to have some kind of test that everybody can use. But how are we using that test? And so it was eye-opening that you have to really look at that. And also I think there's this shift, it was mentioned a couple of times about the state of Florida and how they operate as school boards and superintendents, and there's 64 superintendents in the entire state of Florida, so there's basically one per county is what I understand. We have 1,200 in the state of Texas, and so that you can do the math, and we have, I don't know how many, 15 right here in Bexar County area. And so, I think there's some things as school board members that we need to make sure we're paying attention with, and how either power is being shifted to TEA and potentially, we just talked about it with our cell phone policy. And I'm not suggesting everything is bad, but, we want to maintain this local control. And if that's of interest to you, I suggest you pay attention in the next legislative session over the next couple of years. So anyway, that was...
Mr. Byer, may I just add on to that? What I would encourage you all, if you want to get involved in that, the sausage is being made right now. So many people wait for the session to begin, and then they involve. The folks, the sausage is made. They've smoked it already. They're just trying to finish out how to serve it on your plate. The bills are being written right now. So if that's what you want to do, start getting involved now, which is why Mr. Bywaters and I made a trip up to Austin last week to talk about accountability. Because it's coming in 27, the new one. And so we're already working on, let's have a communication, because I bet you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, you know what I shared. How in the world can we be a 78 3 years in a row? And I brought up there not just to complain, but to show, look at this percentage-wise, so let's have a real discussion, because what I explained is the accountability system has become a Frankenstein. We don't even recognize it anymore, because we've been adding so much onto it, and I think it's losing some of its focus, right? But see, we're starting that conversation now. So don't wait till Austin. Don't wait till it calls. Start working on it now.
All right. Thank you all for the updates, and those that are able to attend. And TASB will be around next year. We'll have summer and then fall again, so keep an eye out for that. All right, we'll move on to item B, possible action regarding 2026 nomination for Bexar Appraisal District Board of Directors. This item came to us last year. The county, based on, I think, state changes in the state law, they had now 3 elected positions, and so they kind of they're trying to get everybody back on cycle. And so we appointed John Fisher, or nominated John Fisher last year. He's now the vice chair of the Bear Appraisal Board. And I've spoken to him so we have an opportunity to nominate a person again this year who will now serve a 4-year term instead of last year was a stopgap, just 1-year term. So I would like to, I'd like to nominate John Fisher to stay in that role. I spoke to him earlier this week or last week, and he was interested in serving again. He lives in the district. His kids went to Northeast. He is very invested in the community, and has done a good job. I know he occasionally talks to Mr. Villarreal and Dr. Micah kind of about what's going on. So if there are any other nominations, we can talk about that. If not, I'd like to offer his name going forward.
I just
Ms. Landry?
have a question about, there were some things brought up about conflict of interest for maybe relationships. Do you know of any conflict of interest with John Fisher that would impact anybody on the board or anybody in the district?
No, I mean, other than me knowing him personally, I mean, doesn't, he's not a relative. I'm sorry?
A business relationship that with
As a friend, no, friendship, neighbor.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Okay.
That's all it is, yeah. No, he's not related to me. I don't do business with him. We're not even in the same industry. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing I would like to nominate, or make a motion to nominate John Fisher as the Northeast ISD Bear Appraisal District Board of Directors nomination.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Shelton. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item 11, new business for possible board action. A, board policy. 1, possible action regarding board policy update 125. We have a speaker for this item. So, Ms. Thompson, you can call the number and keep the time.
Number 8.
Hello again. Okay, so that was a really great discussion. I was really excited to hear y'all talk about some of the things I've been, and it does tie to this topic, don't worry, hoping to hear from people on the dais for a really long time. So I love the ideas of innovating and really bringing in parents in a whole new way. I love the idea of getting fresh voices and just throwing the doors open to our community. And so you have a chance to do that with a couple of these policies we're about to talk about. I also appreciated the discussion about AI and the reality that's coming, that a lot of the jobs these kids dream about may not exist. And so are we even prepared? This is the first time I've heard us talk about anything like that. So first of all, with this thing, the BDAA local, I think it needs clearer rules for filling officer vacancies. It does cover when the president has a vacancy, but the other ones maybe could be clarified. Also, I don't believe it's accurate with regard to who presides over the meeting, keeps the agenda moving. The president typically does that, and so I think that's listed under the secretary's duties, duty number 5, I believe. That might be something you want to change. And also, I was super happy to hear you guys talk about local control. Very, very important. There's nowhere where local control manifests itself more than ignoring what TASB says and writing your own policies, reviewing them, doing them, editing them. That is your key function, okay? One of your key functions is policy. So now that we all understand the importance of local control, grab that by the reins and do it. You know, have workshops, whatever, bring people in. But that is exciting to hear you all care about that so much. So on that note, BDF local, BDB local, they're a little bit overlapping. They have some similar concerns. The way TASB's put it forth would basically give binding decision-making, it's actually in your current policy, binding decision-making to certain committees. That means if you could put students on there, they can make a vote that replaces you. That gives up your local control. We the people want you all to have the authority. And so I just want you to be careful with those couple of policies. I provided a few recommendations to a couple of you. How to maybe rephrase that, or maybe just table it and come back and look at it again when you have more time to process what I'm trying to say. Also references to Texas Open Meeting Act's compliance. I'm not really sure why they deleted it, because no matter what you're doing, you got to comply with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Let's see. I suggest that maybe in these committees that you put in something about conflicts of interest. There is nothing there that I can think of, but you don't want vendors or their first degree relatives there for specific committees that may be making decisions about things that could impact money or include money or impact that. You also, with staff, I know you get lots of advice and opinions from staff. That's 99% of what we hear at these meetings in terms of proposals. But that could be they could be under pressure to vote a certain way if like a promotion hangs in the balance. So I would just say let's free up our staff so that they can have full, true, unfiltered comments, and that they know they can reach out to you directly. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. This actually lists you, Dr. Micah, as the presenter, so.
Well,
we'll go with
all
that.
I'm going to say, Mr. Byer, is my staff and I are here for answering any questions that you may have.
So what I'd like to do with this is we'll, on the sort of the posted agenda action item sheet, it has the order of the 7 policies that we're looking at this evening. There was also a whole slew of legal policies and information that you were provided. Obviously, those are legal. We're not allowed to change those, but if you have any questions about what's any information on those, I'm sure we can ask that. So, so we'll start with BDAA local, which is officers and officials, duties and requirements of board officers. Does anybody have any questions or comments related to that one? Ms. Landry?
I have a couple.
Sorry.
So, under the board officers, the line, the board may assign a district employee to provide clerical assistance to the board, that was struck through. I'm not sure what that did in the past and why we don't need it any longer.
I guess we can ask somebody on staff. My reading of that was that there very well could be districts where they need that assistance on a board, and maybe they've found that they don't need it anymore. Or that it doesn't necessarily have to be a requirement.
I think, Mr. Byer, honestly, when I read this, I'll just tell you is that as a board, you can't direct an employee to do anything other than me. So I think that's what this is recognizing. The board may assign a district employee to provide clerical assistance to the board. Remember, all these folks that work in the district are my employees, but I'm yours. So I think that's what they're cleaning up here. Now, you can ask me to, hey, we want some clerical assistance, and I'm going to say, sure. Peggy's going to be happy to do that for you. And when she's unavailable, Yvonne's all but happy to do it as well, right? I think that's really what it's talking about.
Okay. And so then my next thing under vacancy, I think we could tighten it up or need to tighten it up and add a time frame so that we're not 6 months down the road addressing that. So I would propose at the end of that statement, adding in the next meeting following any vacancies.
You want to say at the next available meeting, just in case something happens and it gets canceled or whatever, we can, I'd be fine with that.
Okay. And then on this one.
Miss Landry, and I don't mean, Peggy, are you catching this? Okay. I just want to make sure she's getting it. Remember, that's the stuff you give for clerical duties.
I can't assign that. I'm just saying. And then under secretary, I had a question on number 5. What does that mean? And Lisa, you may know this, but.
And say we don't usually, we haven't typically done that.
Can we strike it?
We can either strike it or say may present the formal agenda at all meetings if that is something.
I would propose striking it.
Okay. Yeah.
Just for simplicity. And that's all I have on that one.
Okay. Ms. Thompson?
That was what she.
Okay. That was Does anybody else have anything on BDAA? All right, we'll move on to BDB, Board Internal Organization, Board Committees. And I will preface this by saying, in my 6 years on the board, we've had ad hoc committees, and we have some kind of one-off here and there. We don't really have, other districts have a facilities committee, a transportation committee, a technology committee made up of board members. So that
we don't do this.
we have not historically done this. However, the policy is in place in the event that this were to happen. So try to kind of outline what would need to happen, even in for the ones that are just, I mean, they're all advisory committees. We don't really, none of our committees are set up to make decisions.
And we did have a committee during my term once.
Correct.
And I think it was the only one, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody was jumping at the bit to be on it, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So am I to assume that only 3 members are on it, so that there wouldn't be a quorum? Is
Right.
that they're made
Correct.
up of 3?
Correct. Yeah. And if it's the same one you're thinking of, Ms. Landry, I think, yeah, we just had 3 members sit on it. And then they brought a recommendation to the full board. So there are other districts that use that model much more heavily instead of just as a one-off. So, anyway, sorry to interrupt. Does anybody have any questions about BDF?
I just have a couple of suggestions.
Okay.
So, under board committees, I would recommend that we add to establish a time frame as part of the criteria and the bullet points. So when we're establishing the board committee, we'll establish the expected date for the committee to complete. So we're not dragging something out 2 years, 3 years. We have an established time frame. And then there's.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you interpret that as term of the committee membership?
No, because that could mean that the committee members change, but the accomplishment of the goal of the committee is still ongoing. And so I think it's important for us to set expectations when we establish a committee that we want these things to be completed within a certain time frame, whatever, not saying that we have to complete it in 6 months, but to
Sure.
say that we're completing it based on the goal of the committee.
Have that discussion at that
Right.
time
Correct.
and allow for that. Okay.
So would that be an additional?
Your
Would that be an additional bullet?
correct
Just time frame.
established time frame. And then the only other thing I had is in that same section, the next paragraph, the last sentence says not assume administrative duties or responsibilities. I don't know what that means.
I interpreted that again as meaning that they are not to do the work of, I guess, staff and the administration. So if we're asking them to do something, they're providing recommendations and advising the board and not necessarily doing the work of staff. Does that make sense?
It kind of does. So I think about the SHAC and how when a committee in the SHAC wants to get information, I think there was a nutrition program where they needed staff to get the information. But some of the committee members did do some research and some administrative duties, I would say. And so I would like to see that a little bit more clear, and maybe say not assume administrative duties or responsibilities normally delegated to district staff.
You could clarify that. And I guess in the context of sort of the example you gave, that they were requesting the information and then taking it upon themselves to do that. They weren't, collectively as a SHAC. They were doing that work in support of whatever that is they were discussing, and not necessarily, because they have the ability then to ask staff to look into things or provide information. And so, I guess I don't know if anybody else does. I don't have an issue with adding a small clarification, if that's needed. Anyone else? Michelle?
So I just have a question. I want to go back up to board committees, the bullets. What do we mean by term of committee membership? Like, I understand Ms. Landry saying this is that the scope of the project? Or, so I guess I'm not clear then what term of committee membership means, because I thought that was going to be how we time boxed. But if we're saying specifically, we're going to say something that says time boxing, what do we mean by term of committee membership?
So term of committee member, we'll take SHAC, for example. They technically have 2-year terms, but then you can re-up those terms. And so at the end of 2 years, you could appoint somebody else or reappoint that person.
Okay.
So we give some time frames in case there is a change, and then people know when people were put on, or, you know, how long they've been on there. So that's how I'm interpreting the term of committee membership.
So and I feel like we're never going to do this, but I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
We're basically saying we can have a committee of the board, say it's the 3 of us, back row girls, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to give us a term of how long this committee.
Sorry, I was thinking completely the wrong thing here. Sorry, board committees. I'm thinking of appointing other people. My apologies. Yeah, board.
So does it relate to how the term of the board member?
No, this specific policy, yes, this specific policy is related to us sitting on a committee, not us appointing to people to the committee. So my apologies. I was getting off track on that.
Okay, so now I'm really confused.
So if we had committee, let's say we had a transportation committee.
Okay.
And we could appoint 3 people from this board to the transportation committee,
Mhm.
whatever that looked like, whatever they did. And we would say, those 3 members will serve on that committee for the school calendar, or the school year, or the calendar year.
That's the term.
That's their term of service.
Okay.
The SHAC, we appoint somebody to the SHAC. That's where I was getting myself confused. And it's a 1-year term. And then the next year, we look at appointing a new person.
Okay.
So any committees we have, we define what the term of that service is for that committee for us.
So if that's the case, then what Ms. Landry was saying about we have to have a time for when the business is going to be accomplished, that doesn't relate
It
here.
can.
Okay,
It
help
can.
me.
So, we're coming up on an election.
Okay.
And we appoint 3 board members
Okay.
to a committee.
Okay.
Is my mic not on? I'm so sorry. It's great. Okay, so we're coming up to the. Lean into the mic.
So we're coming up to
So
an election.
we're coming up to an election.
Okay.
But the situation that we want to be resolved, so a transportation committee.
Okay.
May extend beyond the election.
Okay.
So we'll want to say, so that we are able to appoint new members when the new board comes in, that we'll want to explicitly say that these members are on here, even though the committee may extend beyond the term of the board.
Okay.
The members may not align.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Any other BDB local comments? Things are all good clarifications. All right, we'll move on to BDF, local board internal organization advisory committees. This is where I was unfortunately going with the last conversation. So any questions on BDF local? Ms. Landry.
I have the same recommendation on this policy to establish a time frame on the first page, and I think that was it.
Anybody have any questions or comments on that? That's good. The next one is EI local, which is academic achievement. So Any questions on this one? All right, next is FDE local admissions, school safety transfers. Any questions?
I just
Yes,
have
Andrew.
one. So item H is new bullying. Does that encompass all types of bullying?
Mr. Shoesmith, I think there were a few questions about this one.
Good evening. Did you have any other parts of the question? All
No,
types of bullying?
That was the only question I had.
So it'd be a confirmed bullying. And so when we have multiple bullying investigations that go out, we have, they have a rationale as how they decide using the Texas State checklist for bullying. And if it's determined that it's confirmed, at that point, then that would be constituted as bullying.
Does that include cyberbullying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Do we have to, because right now item H just says bullying, does it have to say confirmed bullying, or does bullying cover?
Bullying would cover it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Shelton?
So my concern is if someone is accused but not, I would love for it to say confirmed.
It wouldn't be bullying if it wasn't confirmed. It would just be an accusation or an allegation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How is it confirmed? Is there a process?
Using the Texas State
Okay.
checklist for bullying, and the investigator, the
And
administration
I
will
think,
look into
Mr.
it.
Shoesmith, that it,
Thank you.
and I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, it's kind of like when you see the other ones, attempted murder, that's been confirmed. It wasn't an accusation, right? Indecency with a child, that's a confirmed case, not an accusation. So all of these there's an affirmative to it.
That's correct.
Correct?
Any other questions on this one? All right, FEC local, which is attendance for credit. Ms. Landry?
I actually have quite a bit on this one. So under attendance committees, there's a statement stating the superintendent is authorized to make the specific appointments in accordance with legal requirements. So going back to BDF local, does this supersede BDF? It seems to contradict BDF with the establishment of the committees. And are the committees comprised of the same individuals outlined in level 1, which indicates it's an assistant principal, counselor, and at least 3 teachers, and then there's 3 additional levels that have the committee participants. So I was a little confused about the superintendent's committee versus the level 1, 2, 3, and 4 committees, and then also the conflict with BDF local.
Do we have somebody that can
Well,
clarify?
so I'll begin with, when you read, the board authorizes the establishment of an attendance committee. So you're not actually making the committee, you're authorizing the establishment of one. And you're saying you're authorizing me to make as many attendance committees as necessary for efficient implementation of state law. So you're just authorizing that we can create them. Then it's saying that the superintendent used to be shall make specific appointments, is now authorized to make those specific appointments. So it's just when we're at a campus, and Mr. Jimenez, I know you're going to jump in, but when
Yes,
we're
sir.
at it, we just create these committees on campus. I don't really appoint anybody.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. It's a, on the campus, it's either the committee, which could be the principal, assistant principal, counselors, teachers, or it could also just be principal. So the committee could also be principal. That's how we have it written right now in our handbook. But as we go through it, typically, you'll have different levels that will see the concern that comes in of saying this excuse or this absence is due to a medical illness or whatnot. Here's a doctor's note, and we handle it in the first level, and it's done because we get that. If there's let's say a sporting event, somebody is playing out of city in some sporting event, a student, and then we'll have to look a little bit further into, was that something that was within our district? Was that something that was a club type of thing? So we look at all these different levels as we go through to see if we're able to make that exception. So it's always looking at to see if we can work with the family to make an exception for that, but we have to be consistent among that.
Okay, and so in levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's very explicit who the committee is comprised of. So can we strike the superintendent is authorized? Because the committee is defined in those levels, and it seems to be redundant. So it's on page 3 of 3, under attendance appeal process, level 1 is composed of an assistant principal, a counselor, and 3 teachers. Level 2, I think it just says the principal, it looks like. Level 3 is administrator from pupil personnel services, an administrator, a counselor, and at least 4 teachers. So each of those levels really delineates who is in the committee. So I think it's
Well,
just very confusing
is
and
it-
kind of conflicts.
Is there a difference between an attendance committee and an appeals committee? I guess is the clarification.
Yes.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, attendance appeal process, which is the level 1, 2, and 3, whereas the attendance committee, I assume, is before that?
One, yes, sir. One has to do a lot of times with whether a student is going to receive credit for, if they have over a certain number of absences, they won't receive credit. And so we have to go through that process to ensure that they can receive credit. Other times, it's just if there's an absence that really is not necessarily dealing with credit. I have 5 absences, and I want to ensure that these absences get marked excused, but it doesn't really have to do with a credit. So those are the 2 differentiations. One is just for fixing an absence, and the other one is for the appeals. So we usually have 2. Now, they can sometimes be the same. I mean, sometimes that does occur. I think part of what we have to do when we look through the levels is we have to look at if this is our local policy and if we're approving this, we need to make sure that we are following all of this all the way through. If the people that are part of those committees, making sure that those levels are there. But like I said previously, there is that cascade that occurs. A lot of times it happens through the alpha administrator, then sometimes it goes in high schools to the curriculum administrator, and then to the principal and so on, as part of the credit piece of this.
Because I guess this one, yeah, it says for the attendance appeal process, if the credit will be, I'm reading that as if the credit's actually denied, then you go through the appeal process, which specifies who has to sit in
Correct.
on those appeals.
And also, Dr. Micah said that he doesn't actually appoint the
No.
committees. So maybe just for clarity, we can strike it?
Well, and we have, that's pervasive throughout the policies, that we authorize the superintendent, and then the superintendent has the authority to do what he or she
And
needs
the
to.
first paragraph actually gives us that authority. And so the second paragraph isn't being adhered to today, and really it's, it's kind of, we're just kind of skipping a step, and it really isn't, it just adds confusion to the policy and doesn't really clarify anything, and it's not being adhered to.
Yeah, I don't know if that has to be something that has to remain just as a catch-all, as far as.
So at this time, do you appoint the committees?
No, I
The
don't. I don't
principal
appoint
does,
them.
right?
But, Ms. Lang, here's what I wouldn't mind. Let me ask he's not here anymore, but may I ask the attorney tomorrow if there's some reason that it's there? I mean, when I read it, I'm like, I don't know that because I see your argument, right? Because you're authorizing the establishment of it. You're saying, as a board, we authorize you to create it. I don't appoint them. The campus decides who's going to appoint them, right? So unless there's something there, I don't see a reason why you don't, but I'm not a policy guy. So I'm going to ask him, like, can we strike it, get rid of it? If it can, it's gone.
Sounds good to me.
That's if you all vote to approve it striking and be gone.
So my proposal is to seek counsel on whether or not we can strike it. Okay, and then we talked about that. My next question is, does this committee review multiple students at once, or is it a case by case? And it's not a
Typically,
frequent thing?
it's a case by case, and most of the time, especially when credit is part of it, it usually happens towards the end of a semester in the fall and then again in the spring. From some of the principals that I spoke to within the last week, they say usually it's a handful when it comes to that, whether they're going to be getting credit or not. It's not very many.
Okay, that's good, thank you. And then, under methods for regaining credit or awarding a final grade, the third paragraph stops at a petition for credit or a final grade may be filed. It seems like,
It follows in the blue in accordance with administrative regulations.
okay, so those are supposed to, okay, got it.
There's just a space there, I'm not sure why it's there.
Okay. That answers that. And then, under guidelines on extenuating circumstances, I had a question on the student or parent receiving the credit. Is there testing that occurs, and what ensures that it's fair and consistent across the district?
Ms. Landry, where are you looking at again? Guidelines on extenuating circumstances, is it the fourth paragraph that you're looking at?
Let me see. The attendance committee shall. It's the first paragraph. The attendance committee shall consider whether a student has mastered the essential knowledge and skills and maintained passing grades in the course or subject. So mastering the essential knowledge and skills, is there a testing requirement that ensures that mastering? And how do we ensure that if we're providing credit to a student who's had excessive absences in one school in a course, in another school in a course, are being treated fairly to ensure that we're certain that they've mastered, and what are we doing to ensure that?
So, Ms. Landry, this actually is probably the fairest statement, because these students won't get credit. These students passed the course but lost credit due to attendance. So their grade is reflective of their mastery level of the standards. So in other words, if I have a 75, I lost credit due to attendance, even though I have a passing grade. The committee comes in and says they had an extenuating circumstance. We agree that this student should receive credit for the course based on the grade that he earned.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Landry, to answer the second part of that, so that standard occurs throughout the schools.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Is Saturday school still an option for credit recovery?
I'm looking over at Mr. Sheetmus. Yes, yes, it is.
Yes.
Should that be included in the list of opportunities? So we have attending tutorial sessions as scheduled, completing other instructional programs as specified by the committee, Or would that encompass in number 4?
That's the catch-all. Because
Okay.
again, if we change Saturday school to some other name, then you're going to have to change the policy, right?
Gotcha.
So that completing other instructional programs, then that, whatever name it's called, it's good. That's the catch-all piece.
And that's all I had.
Good. Does anybody else have, Ms. Shelton?
So I am concerned about, if legal says it's okay, I am concerned about striking the superintendent is authorized, because what if they don't have a principal and they go up to a level 3, and the superintendent, even though he doesn't do it as a daily, is gonna have to say, okay, that's gonna be Mr. Jarrett, maybe.
But
That's
in
the only thing I'm
paragraph 1,
thinking.
we give the authority to develop the committee, and so in paragraph 2, we're explicitly giving it to the superintendent who doesn't do it. And so with paragraph 1, we're already giving the authority to establish the committee.
Mhm.
We're just not delegating who's responsible for that.
So-
So paragraph 2 is just,
And to clarify, that paragraph that has the superintendent is authorized to make this, that, please correct me if I'm wrong, just lost my page, that doesn't apply to the appeal process.
It does not, okay.
That is a separate, the appeal process
It's separate.
lays
Okay,
out
that's what I
who
was
has to
thinking.
sit
It's
on
the
it. Yeah.
appeal process, we
Yeah.
might need the superintendent to come back into the.
in the
but-
appeal process,
But it doesn't.
delineates who
Yeah.
specifically.
Okay.
And, and if I may, Mr. Jimenez, so I just had a recall, and see if you recall this, that it used to say the superintendent or designee, but they struck designee from everything to make it the superintendent, even though that encompasses the designee. So maybe that's why that language is there, because the superintendent isn't, it says me, but they mean also the principal or somebody else. I think that's it. Because we've had this discussion up here multiple times where it says the superintendent or designee. They struck the designee and it's now superintendent everywhere. Do you remember this,
Yeah,
Mr.
over the
Byer?
last 3, 4, 5 years, they've
And I think-
systematically removed designee from.
Right, and I think that's it. I don't do them, but this is authorizing the superintendent and/or principal and/or whoever is doing it to make the appointments in accordance with the legal requirement.
Yes, sir.
Does this sound?
That is correct, and there is a policy, and I just can't remember what it is at this moment, that actually specifies that that designee is not listed because it's assumed that the superintendent will delegate to somebody or may delegate to somebody.
And still paragraph 1 covers that.
I'll still ask it, Miss Landry. I mean, I'll find out for certain. But I think that's why it is.
Any other questions on FEC before we move on? All right. Last one is FFAC Local Wellness and Health Services Medical Treatment. Questions?
I do have one concern, actually. So on page 3 of 4, under notice to parents, it says after administration of medication, the coordinator shall provide written notice to the student's parent. I'm concerned that the parent should be notified more expediently. Written seems to give us room to delay notification. I would like to have verbal and written notification, or at least an attempt to verbally notify the parents. I think that's a very important situation where parents should be immediately notified that their child may have been in respiratory distress. As a parent, I wouldn't want to wait until Monday to find out if my kid was suffering on Friday.
Question, but you're not saying they should delay giving the kid?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Just making the parent aware as quickly as possible. Right. Right. Absolutely.
I guess so if we go following that, then do we need to provide a time frame by which that person needs to provide that verbal notice? Or for that matter, written notice, because we don't necessarily define that either. But, I mean, obviously, I think to the parent or guardian, that should be as immediate as possible.
Right. But
The
how do
others,
we
healthcare
put-
provider and others could be written, and, maybe that can wait a day or two, but the family notification needs to be more immediate. So I don't know how that works in a practical setting.
The thing I'd be concerned about is if I tried to call the parent and they did not respond, am I responsible then to continue to try to call? Or will my note then suffice because I called, I left you, it's happened to my kid, right? Where Theodore has these issues and they called me, they didn't get me. They took care of him. They called his dad. They didn't call me back, right? And then, so I kind of find out because, he's blue or whatever. So are we now saying that they're going to have to continue to call, or can they make the
No,
one call and that's enough?
I would advocate that it be an attempt as soon as reasonably possible to make a verbal communication with the parent, and then follow up with a written communication.
Is it possible for us to get some information as to how that is operating currently? I mean, I don't, there we go. I was like, I do not disagree with it. I just, if there's some sort of practical application that
Wait a
we're able to look
minute,
at.
this isn't your wheelhouse.
I'm a jack of all trades.
Okay, so it is,
We're all doubting your
I know, right?
qualifications
We're not
right
doubting
now,
your-
Susie.
You're
do
out
not
of
seek medical
context
advice
here.
from me.
You're out of context here.
Okay, so we do practice to call when we administer respiratory distress medicine. That's a pretty serious situation. The only time we wouldn't call the parents first is if, or as we were doing it, is when we feel there's not enough time to even bother with the call and we're calling EMS. So they will call after it's done. They're going to take care of that kid's medical needs. It's, again, if we're administering medication that is, not standard for that child, it's because they're in distress and we're going to take care of them. And so we will call EMS if we are overly concerned, and we might bypass calling them until after that's done because we want first responders there as quickly as possible. Other than that, we're always going to try to call. So it's just practice.
So I
And
guess-
so would it be reasonable to say?
I got that right.
To attempt to verbally contact parents as quickly as possible.
Yes, so our practice is now to try and call before giving, but that's not always possible. And if not, we call as soon as possible afterwards.
So Ms. Landry, I was listening. Would this work? So after the administration of unassigned medication to a student experiencing respiratory distress, the coordinator shall first attempt a verbal notice and then provide written notice to the student's parent. Do you see? That way then we're asking them first to attempt a verbal communication. Then if they don't make it, which is what you were talking about, Ms. Shelton, they're still going to follow up with written. But
Right.
the first attempt's always going to be verbal.
And I would like it to stipulate that the written communication is an absolute, regardless of the verbal connection. But also to Mr. Byers' point that we indicate the time frame should be as soon as possible.
Does that make sense? Any other questions on FFAC?
Mr. Byer?
Yes.
If I may, I just
Yes.
wanted to go back for the record. The local BJA is Superintendent Qualifications and Duties, and a subheading on there is Delegation. And it just says, to the extent permitted by law, the superintendent may designate responsibilities to other employees of the district, but shall remain accountable. So that is where it's listed that he can do that. So that's why we don't have to put or designate all the way through. BJA, local.
So with that, going back to that FEC, the thing we were going to check with Mr. Lopez, the first paragraph says the board authorizes the establishment of an attendance committee or as many attendance committee as necessary. But then that second line authorizes the superintendent to make specific appointments. And so to me, that's saying, one, we're just saying that we authorize the establishment of the committee, but we don't we don't say who goes on the committee. So we need to give the superintendent authorization to appoint the people on that. And by virtue of saying superintendent, we're allowing designee to make that. So I'm seeing those as two separate items personally.
And so then I go back to it causes confusion in the remainder of the policy because there are several different committees, and we're not establishing that committee is explicitly to review the attendance. And then again, my argument is that the superintendent does not even engage in defining who's.
Correct. But I think we've established, but the word superintendent indicates or designee is what TASB has sort of moved to. So even though the superintendent doesn't do that, it's riddled throughout our policy that it just says superintendent. So I guess my comment would be the clarification would be that where it says attendance committees, if we need to clarify that these are not, the people appointed to these committees are not part of the, they are not, this is not the same as the attendance appeal process, which is a completely separate, could be the same people, obviously, but establishing the committees at first is one action. If any of those attendance credits or whatever are denied, then you go to the appeal process, which then specifically outlines who is on those committees. And so, again, going back, it's I think those two paragraphs are lined, and the attendance committee need to remain, because one is just us authorizing the establishment, the next one is the superintendent making specific appointments, because we don't make the appointments. And so if we need to clarify that those people are not part of the, this is separate and apart from the appeal process, then I could see adding that clarification, which might clean it up.
I still say that the second sentence is kind of redundant, because we're authorizing the establishment, and generally because we're not employers of the district staff, that the superintendent would be the only one who would be authorized to establish the committee.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
And then not, taking that out removes, in my mind, all of the confusion. Leaving it in there raises questions about what is that committee doing, and does it supersede BDF local? And I think it just adds a lot of question and concern when if we take it out, it just simplifies the policy and gives us better direction.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because I'm listening to this, and I respect what you're saying, but I'm trying to figure out why having the superintendent is authorized to make specific appointments. Why is that so? Why do we want to remove it? I mean, I understand it could look redundant, but the superintendent is the only one that we have any authority, to direct. So what I'm trying to figure out is why we are taking him out of the equation, or her, or whoever it is that's sitting in that chair.
Well, and we're not, we're allowing the policy to be explicit, just as we remove delegate from the remainder of the policies. It is an assumed, and then throughout the policy, we have other committees that are appointed that are not the same committees as this committee. And so by removing the superintendent, we just have the establishment of the attendance committee, which could include any of the level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it doesn't delineate different.
Well, what I'm concerned about is then that takes, because remember, we only have the authority to have any sort of a conversation with our
Right, and
superintendent.
because we
So if
do-
we take that, in other words, what we're doing is we're removing any authority that we have in
No,
that process.
It's implied.
Well, you don't imply things. When you're writing policy, there is never an implication. It's like what we're doing
It is
with
with the designee.
Well, but that's what we're having the argument with the, our legislators over the implication. I don't believe in implication. I want it spelled out. I want to see it. And since the only person who is responsible to us is the superintendent, I want that right there. Superintendent. He is the, because he is the only one, because I don't want to remove that layer of protection for us. Where then all of a sudden the superintendent is out of the equation, and we're just implying that the superintendent is going to be available. So that's my only thought about it, is because then it seems like we're writing ourselves out of the equation in that case by taking the superintendent out of that layer of protection for us.
But paragraph 1 explicitly states that the board will designate or authorize the establishment of the attendance committees, or as many attendance committees as necessary. So paragraph 1 covers your argument.
But
and
it
then
doesn't, but it doesn't say who would be
I
on those
want it,
committees. I guess that's my point.
I
is that
want the
we would-
one that is actually, he is actually the person who reports to us. I want that spelled out specifically, that ultimately he is responsible. And I feel, I don't know, am I just being dramatic about this? Because
I don't know, ask Siri apparently. Will do that. Just
So,
kidding.
As
Sorry.
I see it, the board establishes that we're going to have the committee. The superintendent designates typically a principal. Somebody's got to get it going. I mean, so we're going to say there's this good committee, but we're not going to go to how many schools and get them going. Somebody's got to initiate that. And that's he can't either. He's got to have the designee, which is typically the principal. So the principal has to have, that's the principal's responsibility to get this committee going and take care of this kid and decide whether we're going to give him credit or not, or whatever in the world it is.
But we
And
don't
that's very different than the appeal process.
But we don't have any control over the principal. There's nothing, there's that, and so he's our layer of protection. So I feel very uncomfortable removing, I know it's a word, but words have meaning, and I don't want to remove him.
Okay. So may I propose that we change paragraph 2 to say the superintendent is authorized to direct the principal or other delegate of each school
Right.
to review attendance in accordance with legal requirements?
Is that not the policy that was just read? That's, I mean, that is like an umbrella over all policies, is it not, that the superintendent has designees?
Yes, ma'am. BJA local.
We can, I don't know that I support that. I don't know how everybody else feels, but, I mean, if anybody else has any comments on how they might want to
Well, I'm clingy
correct
and tenacious, and I want to keep him in there because I, frankly, I don't want to lose any. If something's going to go sideways, I want to know that we have the ability to say, hey, Dr. Micah, something's going sideways here. And if he's taken out of the equation as per, what we did to ourselves, I don't like that.
Ms. Thompson, do you have a question, comment?
I just don't see that there's a problem. So I like it as it is, right here.
All right. Any other comments or questions? We can either take these as a whole or take them one by one if we need to do that for any record purposes. So I'll make a motion on each one, and we'll just go one by one. Do I have a motion to approve BDAA as presented and amended through the discussion?
So moved. Second.
Was that Ms. Landry and then Ms. Cox?
No, Ms. Shelton.
Oh, Ms. Shelton. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay. BDAA local passes. Do I have a motion to approve BDB local as discussed and amended?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Ms. Shelton. Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Policy BDF, do I have a motion to approve policy BDF local as presented and amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Do I have a motion to approve?
This is my favorite.
Do I have a motion to approve policy EI local as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Chidgey. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. I have a motion to approve policy FDE local as presented. Did we make any changes to this one?
No changes.
As presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Those in, second?
Second.
Wait, I guess we got to say, yeah. Thank you, Ms. Cox. Lost track. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Policy do I have a motion to approve policy FEC local as presented?
You mean with superintendent?
As presented, yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Chidgey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. And finally, do I have a motion to approve FFAC local as presented with presented and amended as per the discussion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed, or any nays? Motion passes 7-0. All right, thank you all very much. Item B, business services. 1, possible action regarding resolution indicative of the Board of Trustees annual review of investment programs. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive staff, and guests. Tonight we bring you a resolution for your review and approval of our annual investment report, and also our plan.
So all that information was provided to us in our packets. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Villarreal or his staff? All right. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution as presented to us?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item C, consent. 1, instruction and campus administration. A, school health advisory council member appointments. 2, business services. A, over 50,000 purchases. B, resolution approving sources of instruction relating to investment responsibilities. C, broker-dealer authorization. 3, minutes from September 8th, 2025 and September 22nd, 2025, which has been provided, an update has been provided to everybody in their packet tonight. There was an error on the ones that were emailed to you. And 4, end of consent. Do I have anybody wishing to pull an item from consent for discussion? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve consent as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item 12, reports. A, interim financial report and management, financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. C, federal grants report. D, open records request report. Those have been provided to you. Does anybody have any questions about any of those? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 13, discussion and possible action regarding board members' requests for items to be placed on a future agenda and/or requests for reports from the administration. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add, discuss, request? Seeing none, item 14, adjournment, and the time is 9:01 p.m.